All right, well, we'll get started. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today as we look to improve medical and public health services with trusted SD-WAN solutions. We have us with us today, Copper River, Fortinet Federal, and us, your host for Inc. My name is Dave Tong. I am the senior director here at Fort. Two quick housekeeping notes. This presentation is being recorded and will be made available after. And please hold all questions until the end, or you can drop them in the Q&A box. Next slide, please. All right, just a little bit about FOR. We are a public sector distributor founded in 2006 as an 8A woman-owned small business. In 2016, 17, and 18, we were number one in that category until we ultimately graduated from the program. Initially, FOR was founded in a financing business, and we financed over $4 billion over the years. Currently, FOR is ranked number 71 in Washington Technology's top 100 government contractors. And as our tagline states, we get it done with the IT capitalized. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jim with Copper River.
Thanks, David. My name is Jim Kretzing. I'm one of the senior account executives here with Copper River. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. Copper River is proud to partner with 4Inc. and Fortinet Federal, and we hope today's session is informative and provides value to you. Just before we jump into today's topic, I'd like to share a little bit of information about Copper River. We're an Alaska Native tribal-owned small business. We hold status as an ISBEE, and we're also part of the SBA's 8A program. And if you could advance to the next slide, please. Great, thank you. So one of our missions at Copper River is to diversify the native village of EAC's ability to facilitate economic advancement. So you're probably wondering, who is the native village of EAC? Well, the native village of EAC is a federally recognized tribe located in Cordova, Alaska. Cordova is an extremely remote area, and the tribe has very limited access to healthcare and public services. So one of the main goals of Copper River is to support the tribe economically, and all the revenue generated by Copper River supports the tribe's mission to fund critical health and social services, economic development, land conservation, education, and job training. Next slide, please. So Copper River is actually made up of a family of companies that offer a comprehensive set of solutions and services that include cybersecurity, information technology, construction management, and even maritime manufacturing. Our expertise across these different operating companies includes cloud and virtualization strategies, AI and machine learning solutions, digital transformation, healthcare, and professional services. And the structure of the different operating companies gives us a unique ability to deliver tailored solutions that support our customers while still maintaining focus on their specific missions. Next slide, please. So in addition to offering the solutions and services that I previously mentioned, we provide several different options for an efficient path to procurement. We're contract holders on SOUP 5, GSA MOS, STARS 3, as well as several state and local contracts. And as an SBA 8A, we've got the ability to establish direct award contracts for up to $34 million for civilian agencies and $120 million for DoD or missions that have critical national defense and security missions. The direct award process gives the agency essentially a faster procurement process. We've seen direct awards reduce the procurement process from weeks to some cases even months of reduced time and acquisition. It also streamlines the acquisition procedures under FAR 19.8. We're able to lower the administrative burden of contracting officers with a direct award, and it helps agencies meet their small business contracting goals at the end of the day. So in summary, Copper River, we work with industry-leading OEMs like Fortinet Federal, distributors like 4 Inc., and our customers to come up with a comprehensive solution. And once we've got that solution in place for the customer, we can help them with the procurement process after their needs are met. So if you have any questions about Copper River, my contact info will be listed at the end of this presentation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Phil at Fortinet Federal.
Oh, Phil, I think you're on mute.
I am indeed. Thank you for letting me know. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it. If you could advance to the next slide, that'd be great. Yeah, like Jim indicated, my name is Phil Moser. I've been at Fortinet Federal 6 years to the day today. And I wasn't sure when I joined if it was going to be an April Fool's joke or whether, I'd have a long run. So I'm very, very glad to say that it's been a long run. It's a great company. Joined and hit the ground running, and we have a lot of wind in our sails at Fortinet and Fortinet Federal, and very, very delighted to be here. And it's, like I said, it's been 6 years to the day since I joined. I manage a team of account executives and account support executives, as well as subject matter experts that are focused on selling into U.S. government federal agencies, including obviously HHS and IHS. For those of you that don't know much about Fortinet, our DNA and what most people associate us with are next generation firewalls, and that is indeed how we grew up. That's still at the core of the products and technologies that we roll out to the market. But we've expanded well beyond that to include network security and then core networking capabilities like SD-WAN. And we'll talk a little bit as we go along in terms of how Fortinet combines security and networking into one platform and one product. But in terms of where we stand in the market, Fortinet is a top 3 global cybersecurity manufacturing company. We have a lot of past performance across the federal government, and particularly as it relates to SD-WAN, we probably have the largest deployment of SD-WAN maybe anywhere in the United States at a large postal delivery service where we have over 15,000 sites deployed. And then the other thing that's probably very relevant to IHS is that Fortinet was selected by the largest healthcare provider, government healthcare provider for its SD-WAN initiative, and we are in the throes of rolling that out right now. So that'd be a great reference and some lessons learned for Indian Health Services as they look at a similar technology. We are not a prime contractor, so we team up closely with partners like Copper River. We've known Jim and his colleagues for a long, long time. Copper River is a great partner of ours. Jim is not only representing Copper River, but I know for a fact he's got deep technical bench and technical knowledge himself. So we really do form a tight partnership with Copper River. Like I said, we don't prime contracts, but we come in as a technology partner and as an OEM representative. So with that, let's move ahead to the next slide, please. So I thought before I turn it over to my colleague Nicholas, who is going to go into the technical description and the merits of Fortinet Secure SD-WAN, it might be worth asking the question why SD-WAN is important to healthcare agencies, and in particular IHS. So I've listed a couple of these bullet points here in terms of why this particular technology is important to healthcare agencies, not just government healthcare agencies and hospitals, but as a company, we've deployed SD-WAN across a lot of commercial healthcare organizations as well. And in many senses, SD-WAN is really kind of ideal for an organization with the facilities that IHS has. By last count, I did a little bit of research, and I think IHS has over 880 different facilities, some which manages its own, some which are tribal owned and managed. That includes 23 hospitals, 22, 23, 24 hospitals, somewhere in that range. A bunch of clinics, and a bunch of outposts. So when you take that whole infrastructure and the type of facilities that fall under the IHS rubric, there's a lot of facilities. A lot of them are in remote areas. A lot of them are somewhat small. They can be hard to get to. Some of the networking technology may not be as readily available there as it is in larger metropolitan areas. And even if it is available, it can be very expensive. So SD-WAN can be a very efficient technology for that type of a scenario by providing access and enabling access to multiple types of wide area network technology or WAN technologies. There's an immediate impact in lowering of cost of circuits, products, support, licensing, and maintenance. There's flexibility because a facility is not just dependent upon MPLS, for example, or some kind of unique proprietary technology, but it has access to a lot of different types of WAN technologies, including SATCOM and 5G and 4G. So it provides tremendous amount of flexibility in being able to connect to the outside world, even from remote areas. SD-WAN can provide redundancy and failover. Hospitals and clinics, as we all know, they cannot go down. They can't go down with their power infrastructure, and they can't go down with their network infrastructure or the security infrastructure. And so SD-WAN provides a tremendous way to develop and integrate resiliency and failover into hospitals, clinics, research institutions. Final thing I'll say before we go on to the next slide is what Fortinet does uniquely is it doesn't just provide SD-WAN, but it provides the leading edge cybersecurity protection for that network. I think we all are pretty familiar that as unfortunate and as horrible as it sounds, hospitals and hospital systems have been especially vulnerable targets for ransomware, as an example. I live outside of Baltimore. A couple of years ago, Baltimore Medical Center was subject to a huge ransomware attack. It brought it down. It was a real challenge for them to bring things back up. And hospitals are particularly vulnerable for ransomware and other kinds of malware. So Fortinet, by virtue of the fact that we provide up to layer 7 cybersecurity controls, can provide that layer of security protection on top of a very low cost, flexible, wide area networking technology. Okay, let's move ahead, and you'll hear a lot more about this. So this is probably my one real sort of marketing slide, but it's a slide that we're proud of because it really speaks to the differentiation that Fortinet brings into this market. And that is kind of conveyed in one word, which is convergence. And convergence of networking and security, but we do so as industry leaders. So a lot of agencies look at Gartner Magic Quadrant as an indicator of where a vendor like or OEM stands in terms of the technology, in terms of industry recognition. We're proud to say that Fortinet is at the top of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, Leaders Quadrant, for both SD-WAN as well as network firewalls. The network firewalls is from late 2022. It's the latest Gartner Magic Quadrant for that particular technology. We expect a new one to come out fairly soon. But be that as it may, Fortinet's at the top of both of those. The important piece of this is that our ranking is based upon the same product, FortiGate, with the same OS and the same management system. It covers both of those technologies, which shows, again, it speaks to the way we're driving convergence between networking and security. If you're looking at SD-WAN, you really should look at us and give us a call. At least consider us because we're at the top of this industry marker. Next slide. This is my last slide before I turn it over to Nicholas, but I already referenced the word convergence. This is probably the hallmark of how Fortinet approaches secure SD-WAN, and that is a convergence of technology and security in one product. The FortiGate, we do advanced routing, we do SD-WAN, we do next generation firewall, and we enable zero trust network access all through that one firewall with one OS operating system and one management. Some customers start out by deploying us as a router replacement, very, very robust router. Some customers start out by deploying us as an SD-WAN device. Some customers start out by deploying us as a next generation firewall. But once deployed, they generally migrate to enable all three of these capabilities, with eventually SD-WAN and next generation firewall kind of taking the center spot of a modernized edge architecture. So with that, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will address them later. But I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Nicholas, and he will go through the technology and how this all works.
All right. Thanks, Phil. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicholas Ballister. I'm a consulting systems architect at Fortinet Federal. I've been here about 2 years myself, but I have extensive experience working in service provider environments, for federal agencies and contractors. So very familiar with SD-WAN, very familiar with how to deploy it, and also how to integrate it in your current operational environment. Next slide, please. So, Phil brought up a good point about convergence, right? As you know, our attack service of the network has greatly expanded. We have work from home users, branch offices. We're constantly adding new sites. And, legacy networks just can't really keep up with that, I think. We have multiple different technology. We have our switching infrastructure, our wireless infrastructure. We have our routers, right? But that's all they do. And if we were to even enable the slightest security features on them, the CPU, memory, all the resources available are going to be significantly increased. So you know what? We need the cybersecurity services, right? So that's where, we take traditional networking, cybersecurity services, and merge them into one OS for the FortiGate solution. The FortiGate solution is very robust. It can act as a wireless controller, a LAN controller. You can do NAC, and we'll get to that in a little bit, and Forta, SD-WAN, SD branch. But by consolidating all these services, we can secure our network edge and our network in general and reduce, overall complexity of the network, and also reduce costs because we're consolidating the different functionality into a single pane of glass, as well as the multiple different products that we're using to perform, specific functions. Instead of having to have a router and a firewall, we can have all those functions combined into one. Next slide, please. So what is Fortinet's secure SD-WAN? And the reason why I say secure is the most important part is because you can have an SD-WAN solution, but it may not be secure. For other vendors, they may provision a router and turn on SD-WAN features on that router. But if you were to do, say, direct internet access, where you're actually sending that traffic directly through the underlay, you're going to have a tough time, again, with those resources on those devices even. So the best way to do it is with a firewall. So, Fortinet's secure SD-WAN is not a feature. Sorry, it's not a product, it's a feature, right? So this is something that is included at no additional cost. You can simply turn it on at any time you'd like. You don't have to deploy the FortiGate with SD-WAN. You could integrate it into your existing architecture, as Phil mentioned, and then grow from there. So you don't have, it's not something you got to get a million different servers to deploy. It's simple in that regard. So it's a feature that simply allows the FortiGate to use the best path in order to reach an application. And then we apply quality of service, security, and overlay networking. So essentially, it's going to build its IPsec tunnels. You're going to be encapsulating the traffic. For applications that you may not want to have tunneled, you want the direct internet access. That's, again, where we'd look for the next-gen firewall features to go ahead and apply security controls to those traffic flows. And you may ask the question, okay, so, we have the FortiGate and we're inspecting those flows, but what about performance? So that's where the ASIC acceleration for these traffic flows comes into play. So we have custom ASICs that will actually allow us to get more performance out of the box at a lower cost. And then obviously, as traditional, SD-WAN solutions come and go, we have the zero touch provisioning, low touch provisioning specifically, and we have our single pane of glass management. We have multiple different ways to steer traffic along the best path so that we can ensure that our applications have the highest success rate of user favorability and not losing our traffic as it's going across the WAN. Next slide, please. So here's just a quick screenshot of, the SD-WAN system, right? So it's basically just another tab within the FortiGate. You have your zones, which are essentially your logical groupings of overlay tunnels and underlay interfaces. And then you have your SD-WAN rules, and I'll come back to this in a sec. But you also have performance SLAs, which allow you to probe the health of your network links. And there's multiple different ways that you can probe. You can do active probes, which there's multiple different types of probes. You could do ICMP, you could do DNS requests, you could also do HTTPS, HTTP requests. And then there's also other methods of doing that. You could also do passive probing where you're actually looking at the application itself and seeing how it's performing. So once you built your zones and service level agreements, you basically can tie those into SD-WAN rules. And SD-WAN rules are, I don't want to say they're so simplistic that anyone can do them, but they're very easy to follow, right? If your engineers have any experience working with firewall policies, being able to pick up the SD-WAN rules and learn them, it's a very low learning curve compared to other products where you may have to learn additional protocols or other architectures to make the SD-WAN system work. That's not to say that these SD-WAN rules are not robust. They're extremely robust. You can steer traffic based on a multitude of different options, including application base, right? And we'll get to some of that in a sec. We have a large, extensive internet service database, which basically allows us to identify applications and use those within the rules. And then there's multiple different steering strategies that you could use. You could load balance across the links. You could use links with the least amount of bandwidth. So, we have a very robust tool set within these rules, and you can apply these rules. I could give you a single FortiGate and you can go ahead and set these up. So, very robust SD-WAN solution without the complexity. Next slide, please. So, as we kind of discussed about reducing complexity, here's just a general high-level overview of the architecture. You may notice that there's not really a SD-WAN controller, so to speak. Kind of how this architecture would look like. We have a FortiAnalyzer, which is essentially our logging and retention system, right? So the FortiGate itself, which is the SD-WAN device, is going to be sending logs to the FortiAnalyzer. And then we have the FortiManager, which is our single pane of glass management console. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to script out, firewall policies, script out SD-WAN changes, deploy new sites with low touch provisioning, apply, low touch provisioning templates once a new device is onboarded. And it'll also allow us to, see a large amount of dashboards within FortiManager and Analyzer where we can see the health of our network. Both of these tools have extensive built-in integrations with other products such as ServiceNow. So, you can integrate these into your existing environment along with, those integrations will allow us to then be able to also send information such as API calls from ServiceNow into the FortiManager to provision sites as well. So that can help us with that. And then the FortiGate, we have our cloud security services, mainly FortiGuard Labs, right? That's going to be our threat intelligence feed that the FortiGate can pull. And you could also get those security updates to your FortiManager and push them out to the FortiGate. And that's going to allow us to implement our security services that we have down in the bottom here, such as IDS, IPS, threat prevention, you're looking for malware, right? And with that threat intelligence from the FortiGuard labs, we go ahead and implement those security policies on our traffic. And those are going to be accelerated by that ASIC that I was mentioning earlier. So we don't take a reduction in throughput while still providing the security features of the next gen firewall. And then, that also leads us into, we're going to be talking a little bit more about SD branch, but the FortiGate is also, as I mentioned, the WAN and LAN controller, right? So we can have a FortiExtender, which is essentially, a wireless WAN extension, and you can actually integrate that into your FortiGate. You have the FortiAP, which is your wireless access point. It can all be controlled by the FortiGate via FortiLink. And then the FortiSwitch as well. You can do that. You can manage the FortiSwitch if you have a small branch site with, today a singular router and a switch, which is common in most enterprises. You can consolidate that into a single pane of glass where you're managing your LAN environment from a singular FortiGate. And then if you had the FortiManager, you could also, that's your higher level single pane of glass, right? So it all depends how far you want to take it. And then as far as SD-WAN services on the FortiGate, obviously we have, WAN path selection. We also have WAN path remediation where, say, for example, you have a very critical network application that, you can't have any packet loss. Well, you could go ahead and implement packet duplication or even forward error correction where the system itself will make attempts to correct that packet loss and ensure that no traffic is dropped so that your application retains, its high availability and uptime. We already mentioned, it's a robust router, right? Support most of the routing protocols, extensive BGP support, so it's very good in that regard. And then, it's really transport agnostic. You can connect this device to almost anything. The SD-WAN does not care what it's going over, right? As long as you can have IP connectivity, you can run SD-WAN on it. So multitude of different transports supported. Any questions on any of this? All right. Next slide, please. All right. So we have the secure SD-WAN, then we have secure SD-WAN, SD branch, sorry. So essentially, this is where we're going to take that, LAN environment and then control it via the FortiGate, right? So we're consolidating the LAN architecture, the WAN architecture into a single pane of glass management. Let's just say we had a FortiGate and a FortiSwitch in this example. We're managing that via FortiLink. We're controlling the configuration from a single point. We're also, ensuring that those clients connected to the network are, being inspected. All that traffic is being inspected by the FortiGate. So thus, we're going to have higher security posture. You can also implement, basic NAC within the FortiSwitch itself and FortiAP. So basic NAC. We also do have a FortiNAC product, which will allow us to, integrate further into the FortiGate to actually interrogate those end hosts and, ensure that they're remaining compliant with the organization security posture policies. And then obviously, the FortiExtender, like I mentioned earlier, that can be used as a primary WAN or even a backup WAN in certain circumstances for critical sites. And all that is, again, integrated into the FortiGate if you want to manage it that way. All right, next slide, please. So, some of the high-level capabilities of the Fortinet Secure SD-WAN solution, right? So we have the large application database that allows us to identify applications and steer them. We have a multitude of different options for our SLA agreements. We can do mean opinion score for, say, we're doing, VoIP traffic. We could also attach, QoS values to those service level agreements to ensure that that traffic isn't dropped by, say, the service provider, right? Because that's technically controlled traffic. And application steering options. So like I mentioned earlier, you can do, L7 based steering, application based steering. You could do load balancing. You could do, really the world is your oyster on choosing which path is most preferred for your application. Cloud on-ramp, right? You could take our SD-WAN solution and you can mix and match physical and virtual. There are some solutions that there are actually, limitations on mixing different, physical mediums of them, right? You couldn't do a VM and you couldn't do a physical. It has to be either all VMs or all physical. So, that's not really a problem with the Fortinet solution. You can have a tunnel potentially going right to your cloud on-ramp or do direct internet access. And then packet-based steering. So this is where you could, do round robin, per packet load balancing, per session-based load balancing. There's a multitude of different, algorithms available for that. And then the WAN resiliency, right? FEC and packet duplication. So those are available. I already kind of hit on those to reduce, downtime within the applications. Quick failover. I mean, you could tweak your, service level agreements to failover within, a couple milliseconds, right? But obviously you need to be a little careful not to go, too hairpin fail over the links because you may run into some issues with that. We also support tunnel bandwidth aggregation. That's where we can take multiple IPsec tunnels and aggregate their bandwidth into one. So pretty useful if you'd like to do, per packet load balancing or round robin on that. The high availability architecture, right? So the FortiGate itself, it makes its own forwarding decision. It's not reliant on a controller. It's autonomous from the controller. So, and I mean, there is no controller, right? So if there's any network issue, the FortiGate itself is going to make that best path decision-making process as long as it has, traditional routing information available. So it's highly redundant in that aspect. And you can have multiple different hubs, right? So hubs would be used in a scenario where we would have spoke environments and they would be talking to each other, and then you would use the hub to facilitate those interspoke communications. And then for our management platform, right, the FortiAnalyzer, FortiManager, that's going to be our single pane of glass, our knock and sock views. We're going to have the per application monitoring, so you'll be able to see that within the dashboards, and then also take that and create, customizable reports with as much or as little detail as possible as you would like, and you can customize those and make your own dashboards, your own reports, and have that information available for your engineers and service technicians to, view and help remediate the network. And then, low touch provisioning, I already kind of mentioned that, where you could have a FortiGate reach out to FortiManager and pull a config once you want to onboard a new site onto the network. All right, next slide, please. So, the FortiGate, right? It's got a lot built into it. We have multiple different, sizes of FortiGate. You have branch, campus, data center. The larger the FortiGate, the more throughput you need. We have virtual machines. It doesn't really matter, right? All these devices have the same feature set, the same OS, same feel. So if you were to go to one, you can understand the other. It's the same OS, and they all have the ability to securely manage your LAN environment via that FortiLink, right? The FortiAPs, FortiSwitch, FortiExtender can all be managed by either VM or physical, and then also the integration into FortiNAC. And then obviously, our FortiGuard threat intelligence services, some of the FortiGate services are all powered. Well, they have AI integrations, so that'll help, increase the speed at which we are responding to threats, right, with that greater intelligence at the edge. All right, next slide, please. So, if we're looking at deploying a large-scale SD-WAN solution, something would look like we have our FortiManager, right? It has built-in overlay templates, and these are essentially Fortinet recommended best practices already built in. You go fill in a couple boxes. Obviously, it says here that minimal technical expertise are required. I definitely recommend, having some technical expertise to go ahead and implement these things. But they could actually be, followed by someone who is not as familiar with the product, because the wizards will guide you through it, right? And it'll give you the best configurations for the deployment. For larger, more complex deployments, obviously, you know, definitely give us a call and we can chat about those and how to best integrate into your in your environment. But you know, FortiManager extensive, you know, deployment help, right? Multiple wizards, you have different ways to script and push out changes and make groupings of devices. The world is really, really your oyster in that regard. And you know, like I mentioned, just kind of to solidify that you can mix and match different architectures, right? So you could have your on-prem data center hosting certain applications, then you could have your cloud hosting your cloud applications, and you can pass traffic between them without any issue there. All right, next slide, please. I mentioned earlier about the dashboards, right? So we have the FortiManager, FortiAnalyzer. Those are highly configurable. You know, you can set up if you want to look at certain applications, certain sites, certain links, and how those are performing. You could create your own custom dashboards for that. You can look at different statistics such as WAN utilization or application performance. And then you could take that data and have your dashboards, right? Overall network health, and then put them into reports, which is what we'll get to next. So next slide, please. So obviously, you know, if we want to know how our network is performing, we want to know, you know, which sites maybe need more attention than others, if there's potential problems, if there are certain sites that are having, you know, threat notifications, right? We're gonna be able to see that within the FortiAnalyzer from our security services that we applied to the FortiGate, right? We may need to provide remediation services, user training, technical support to those sites to remediate those vulnerabilities or network issues before they become a major problem, and then the users start calling in and complaining that their services are down. So, you know, our knock and SOC teams, they can take this information that we gathered from FortiManager and FortiAnalyzer and create reports within the analyzer, and then give that to, you know, management and decision makers to then proceed and ensure that, you know, the operational environment is running as expected. All right, next slide, please. And that's all I had. Back to Phil.
Great, thanks, Nicholas. Excellent overview of the technology. So I hope that was useful to you folks. Like I mentioned before, the Indian Health Service Network in many respects is a really, really ideal environment for SD-WAN, both because of the how spread out the network is, and the types of facilities that you have to service, and the requirements to have resilient connectivity in areas where sometimes it's hard to get that. The security component, again, like I mentioned before, security umbrella and overlay that we bring, or that Fortinet brings, is especially important for hospitals these days. As much as I hate to say it, hospitals unfortunately have become a target for the bad guys, and we bring in, you know, the capability to provide really industry-leading cybersecurity protection with industry-leading modernization technologies for the edge of the network. Would love to be able to talk with you more if you're interested. I know that Jim and his team at Copper River would love to do the same. A couple of things, other resources, if you are interested, we have a lot of documentation that can further your market research. We'd love to do product demos. We'd be happy to do that at any point in time. We'd be more than happy to support evals either at your location, at our location, at the Copper River location, or honestly in the field if you want to do a proof of concept in the field to see how it really works. We've got a lot of flexibility and are happy to support that. With that, I think I will wrap up. Thank you so much to 4Inc., to Jim, to you and the Copper River team, Nicholas, for your technical overview, and for everybody else that participated in pulling this webinar together. Dave, I'll let you do the closing, and I'll go on from there.
Phil, that was fantastic. So again, on behalf of Phil and Nicholas at Fortinet Federal, Jim with Copper River, and all of us at 4Inc., we appreciate it. Look forward to the recording coming out. And everyone take care. Have a great day. We'll see you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.